What if I told you that the world's most powerful rocket company, the one now building the literal infrastructure for a multi-planetary civilization, was once just weeks away from total liquidation? Today, SpaceX is a $1.77 trillion titan. It's a symbol of innovation and a cornerstone of the modern global economy. But before the record-breaking IPO, before the reusable boosters, and long before the trillionaire status, there was only one rocket left and one final desperate shot to prove that the private sector actually belonged in space. This isn't just a story about rockets. It's a story about the psychology of survival. It's the story of the high-stakes gamble that almost ended before it began. We're going to pull back the curtain on the 3 years of public failure that nearly broke the most ambitious entrepreneur on the planet and reveal exactly how SpaceX pulled off the greatest corporate resurrection in modern history. To understand why this company was on the brink of death, you have to look at the old space era. For decades, space travel wasn't an industry. It was a stagnant, impenetrable government monopoly. Companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and state-run entities operated on what's known as a cost-plus model. They didn't compete on price, innovation, or efficiency. They competed on political influence and multi-year government contracts. Launching a single payload into orbit could cost upwards of $54,000 per kilogram. To put that in perspective, launching a small satellite cost more than the price of a luxury house. It was slow, bloated, bureaucratic, and it hadn't evolved since the Apollo era. The aerospace giants were comfortable, and they had no incentive to innovate. If a rocket cost more, they made more money. The entire system was designed to keep costs high and progress slow. It was a closed loop where taxpayers paid for stagnation, and engineers were discouraged from taking risks because failure was treated as a scandal rather than a learning opportunity. Then Elon Musk entered the scene. He wasn't an aerospace engineer. He was an internet entrepreneur fresh off the massive success of the PayPal exit. He was an outsider with no background in ballistics, propulsion, or orbital mechanics. But he had a radical, borderline insane belief that space travel was just an engineering problem, waiting for a logic-based solution. He argued that if you could make a rocket reusable, like an airplane, like a car, like a ship, you could slash the cost of reaching orbit by over 90%. That was the birth of SpaceX in 2002. He took his own millions, poured them into a warehouse in El Segundo, and started hiring the brightest young engineers who were tired of the slow-moving defense industry. But in the boardrooms of Washington and the factories of Long Beach, the aerospace establishment didn't see a visionary. They saw a hobbyist who was about to lose a lot of money. They laughed at the idea of vertical landings. They mocked the idea of a private company reaching orbit. They had no idea they were looking at the company that would dismantle their entire business model and reset the pace of human progress. But disruption isn't free, and it certainly isn't cheap. Between 2006 and 2008, SpaceX didn't reach orbit, it reached disaster. The maiden flight in March 2006 was a nightmare. It was supposed to be the proof of concept. Instead, it ended in seconds. Fuel line corrosion, a tiny, overlooked technical detail, caused an engine fire, and the Falcon 1 rocket disintegrated in a spectacular fireball over the Pacific Ocean. It was a humiliating debut. The media didn't just report it, they used it to confirm their bias that a tech billionaire had no business playing with rockets. 1 year later, in March 2007, the second flight was supposed to be the comeback. The team had redesigned the fuel systems, hardened the electronics, and refined the stage separation. The rocket cleared the atmosphere and reached the edge of space, only for the second stage to sputter, lose thrust, and drift helplessly in the vacuum before burning up on re-entry. It was a partial success. The first stage performed perfectly, but the industry was relentless. They called it a glorified firework. By the third flight in August 2008, the tension was suffocating. The entire company's remaining cash reserves were tied to this mission. Musk had flown in a Russian rocket team to negotiate, was rejected, and decided to build it himself. At 140 seconds into the flight, disaster struck again. The booster detached awkwardly, slammed back into the second stage, and both tumbled together into a massive mid-air explosion. It was 3 years of public humiliation. Investors pulled out, terrified. The press had a field day calling SpaceX a failing startup destined for bankruptcy. Inside the company, the atmosphere was toxic. The engineering team was pushed to the brink of exhaustion. And Elon Musk, he was down to his final investment. He had enough money for one, and only one, more launch. It was the ultimate test of character. Pivot or die. He had to convince his staff that the engineering was sound, that the math worked, and that they weren't just wasting their lives on a delusion. The world was watching, and for all intents and purpose, SpaceX was already dead. September 28, 2008, the binary moment, the final Falcon 1. The air at the Amalek Island launch site was thick with humidity and existential dread. As the countdown hit 0, the entire history of private spaceflight hung on those engines. It worked. It soared through the atmosphere and achieved a perfect orbit. The joy in the control room was primal. That mission didn't just carry a satellite, it carried the entire future of the company. It triggered a $1.6 billion NASA contract. The oxygen needed to shift from an experimental startup to a functional aerospace titan. But Musk didn't stop there. He immediately pivoted to the Falcon 9 and the near-impossible dream of vertical landing, a technology the government said was impossible to master. When the Falcon 9 finally debuted, the math was brutal for the incumbents. SpaceX slashed launch costs to roughly $3,000 per kilogram, while the Russian Soyuz sat at double that, and the retired space shuttle cost nearly 20 times more. This was the moment the old guard lost the game. They weren't just being out-engineered, they were being outpaced. SpaceX was launching rockets with a cadence that defied logic, reusing boosters 20, 30, even 40 times. The monopoly was over. The era of the reusable rocket had arrived. The world changed overnight. NASA, once a skeptic, became the primary customer. Reusability stopped being a theory and became an industry standard that forced aerospace giants to scramble for their lives. But SpaceX didn't just build rockets, they built infrastructure. They shifted from launch services to civilizational architect, scaling Starlink to over 10 million subscribers, creating a global internet mesh that proved space was the new frontier for connectivity. And they didn't stop at orbit. They pivoted into advanced manufacturing, semiconductor fabrication, and merged with xAI to build space-based data centers. This wasn't just a rocket company anymore. It was a tech conglomerate built for the next century. Fast forward to June 12, 2026. The SpaceX IPO wasn't just a listing, it was a $1 trillion reality check. Raising $75 billion, the company debuted at a $1.77 trillion valuation, instantly eclipsing Saudi Aramco to become one of the most valuable companies on Earth. By proving that complexity could be managed through a fail-forward culture, SpaceX fundamentally altered the velocity of human progress. They proved that the biggest risk wasn't failing. It was playing it safe in a world that was already moving on. They didn't just save their stock price, they saved the future of spaceflight. But scaling to this level brought a whole new set of ethical and geopolitical challenges that we're only just starting to see. With dominance comes scrutiny, and the path forward is anything but guaranteed. And as SpaceX moves to colonize Mars, they are navigating legal, moral, and economic hurdles that no company has ever faced. The question isn't whether they can launch. It's whether a single entity can hold the keys to the future of humanity. If you want to see a story of a brand that made a completely different, even riskier bet to survive, you'll want to check out our next deep dive into the identity crisis that almost destroyed YouTube. You'll find it right here. See you there.